Happy Turkey Day Eve, all y'all out there that are in the U.S. and celebrate such things. I'm one of your hosts. I'm Marty. Welcome to another episode of Heavy Metallurgy's Album Club, Wednesday Album Club. I'm surrounded by some pretty awesome dudes. We're going to start off with Mr. Morbid Crank here. Jim, how you doing, man? What's going on?
Doing good. We've got everything's $5 sale on my card for Iwas, so links in the description. So buy some tapes. I'll be shipping out whatever is sold next week. I'll be out of town till Sunday night, but yeah, everything's $5. So support the underground. Buy some tapes.
Got a new release up on there too. 2 new releases actually.
Just one new release. Nail Wound I put out. That's metalcore band I put out. Your local guys, good bunch of dudes, good people, great show. They put on stage, and the other album is Verlust. It's their latest release. I put out his second cassette a couple years ago. He's on a different label now. We just did an exchange, and I got some of his new stuff. So
right on.
Selling that too as well. So
I thought you put that. I saw that, and I'm like, wow, great. Moving on up.
No, hopefully he's moved on to a bigger, better label than mine. So. But we're here for the support, though. Yeah, we're still cool.
So right on, what you been spinning?
Leviathan's Pit Sublevel of Suicide. I really dig this record. I was a latecomer to black metal, and this was one of the first things I heard. And so I was definitely happy to see that it was reissued. Because it's ridiculous on Discogs. So pick that up. And also, I got some Yngwie.
All you need is the first 3 albums. You're good.
Yeah. This was actually the first Yngwie I ever heard. The song "Fire" was on. I've talked about this before. Was on one of those K-Tel metal master, things. This came out in '86. This is an original press that I found at my local record shop. The song that made me buy the record does not hold up well. "Fire" isn't really a good song at all. But the instrumentals on here are definitely fire. Ha ha ha. So basically just like every song on side 2 is really good after the one that I bought the record for. So
remind me who sings on this. Is it Joe Lynn Turner that sings on this, or is it?
I think it is Joe Lynn Turner. No, this is Mark Bowles.
Oh, yeah. I listened to this album this year after I'm like, God, I gotta put it on. And it's a lot glammier than you could tell he was trying to lean into that era a little bit.
Yeah.
But I still liked it. Whatever. It's still good.
Definitely go back and check the instrumentals. They're pretty flawless on this. So yeah, cool.
All right, Kellen, how are you? Happy belated birthday.
Yes, thank you.
Which we should have said last week, I guess, but we got you.
It's all good.
Nothing. Most brutal gift ever.
What's been going on with you?
Nothing much. So let's see. I got a few things here for. I usually, I guess we started once. I will say I'm a bit more hesitant after last week's Bulk Rogan experience.
He's got one eye. He's ready.
Yeah, I'm like, I will go through this slowly, waiting for the appearance. So we just got a promo recently, and this new record by this band came out. This is back from 2015, I believe. This is Cruciamentum, Carnal Passages.
New album sounds pretty good.
Yeah, I haven't had a lot of time to spin the new one, but this weekend I kind of was looking forward to doing a little compare and contrast since it's been almost a decade between releases. So that's Carnal Passages. This is Weld and Woe. I heard about this band through the Obsequii guys. They posted this on their Instagram a while ago, and it's very much in that same vein. If you, what do you want to call it, castle medieval metal kind of deal, but this is entitled For the Good of the Realm. And last one I have is Aldridge. This is their new one entitled Folklore from Further Out. Just some more sort of winter pagan black metal kind of stuff for you.
Sweet. All right. One track, Ted. What do you got? How you been?
What?
How have you been?
Well, I mean, it could be the muscle relaxers, but I'm doing all right. Yeah, I'll let you guys decide.
Being
But,
an athlete, people don't seem to realize in the chat, maybe, that being an athlete, it takes a toll on your body after a while.
you have no idea how I suffer. Standing up, sitting down, laying down.
The one sit up a day, getting out of bed, it's all grind. It's all grind.
Yeah, so I'm adding a new segment today. Stupid shit Ted bought. Check it out, everybody. Look at this stupid thing that I bought. It's a Xarelto display for a heart clinic, and it lights and makes noise, and I'm fucking proud of it. So anyway,
put that up there next to your worthless turntable in your dinner plate.
I'm Jenga in the room right now. It's all there's math and feng shui. It's happening. Anyway, so I'm working on completing my witch hazel collection. So I just got the prelude. It's like the prelude and then sojourn. It's like there's like 3 in a row or whatever. So it's really cool. And then I don't have either one of these, but what is it? A band Kriegsmaschine Apocalypsists. I just ordered that today. I don't know much about them, but it's really cool.
Members of Migwa, I believe.
Yeah, that's what you were telling me. And then there's a guy on YouTube. His name is Dennis Pauna, and he does all these like, what if this band did this song like this band or whatever? Like, what if ZZ Top wrote this song or whatever the hell? Well, he did. He re-recorded the entire And Justice for All record if it was a death metal, and it fucking rips. I hate that record, and I would buy this. I would listen to this all the time. So it's on YouTube and it's on Spotify. Dennis Pound. It's really cool. And then for all, it's like whatever. Yeah. Oh yeah. The bass is there, and it's incredible. It's like the best death metal covers of Metallica I've ever heard. It sounds like Bolt Thrower sometimes. It's really cool.
You got to put that one in the chat, TJ.
Yeah, I'll find the link and put it in there. It's I ain't kidding. I never have liked that record. I know most people stop that don't like any of this stuff after, I kind of stopped. His name is Dennis Pauna. I'll type it out here real quick in the chat. DenisPauna, I think. Let me look again. Pauna, Dennis Pauna. And I'm not sure. Yeah, right. He's got a bunch of them. He's got a whole bunch of, ZZ Top wrote, I think, what did he do? Like Seek and Destroy or something like ZZ Top. I don't know. It's some of it's silly, but some of it's really cool. He did a whole record of Typo Negative covers, all on acoustic guitar. It's very interesting. He's really talented, but yeah, definitely worth checking out for sure. But yeah, that's where I'm at with all that.
Cool. For me,
yeah. How are you, Marty? Come on, everybody. How are you?
Great. Great. Yeah, we're gonna have a kind of a what we're thankful for / what's spinning episode on Friday. So I'm not gonna show too much I've been listening to, but Alan reviewed this new Zoth album, Exogalactic, on Heavy Metallurgy. and I'm the guy that edits the videos and harvests the clips. And I liked what I heard in the 10-second chunks I was pulling out of this album. So I bought the CD from the band's Bandcamp. They're a Seattle 4-piece. I want to say melodic death metal, but it's not really melodic. When you think mellow death, there's a certain picture it paints in your head. So this to me is just a techie death metal record. But the thing of it is, they don't lose sight of catchy songs. So, you get to a lot of this tech stuff. It's just more ooh, ah, than it is actual songs. Well, there's songs here, and there's a slight undercurrent of power metal on this too, which I think also it isn't in the vocals. The vocals are all grim.
And there it is, Marty.
Yeah. But the solo work mainly, there's like really shredding. I mean, that's where the power metal kind of comes in on this. But there's an airiness, even though there's a lot going on, there's room for the songs to breathe, and they're catchy as hell. Solo work's fantastic. I think it
rips.
The first song, Reptilian Bloodsport, there's like a Stranger Things keyboard thing that comes in. It's so cool. It's so cool. I'm like, God, I wish they did this more on the album. But yep, I had to get this one. And there's some other stuff I've picked up on CD this week too, but we'll talk about that Friday. Lazarus Dwayne will be on, and Scott Waters will be on. Well, Alan may or may not. I don't know. Alan, if you're going to be on or not, he's got holiday stuff to do. So we'll hold the fort down either way. But yeah, but tonight we're here to talk about Another Perfect Day by Motörhead. This album came out in 1983. For Another Perfect Day recording after lead guitarist Fast Eddie Clarke left Motörhead in 82. In the midst of the band's Iron Fist tour, guitarist Brian Robbo, Robertson, Thin Lizzy and Wild Horses, was recruited to complete the tour. Drummer Phil Taylor, who had been a huge Thin Lizzy fan, had lobbied Lemmy to hire Robertson. The change was initially welcomed by both Lemmy and Taylor. In Joel McLiver's book, Overkill, The Untold Story of Motörhead, Lemmy is quoted at the time saying that the band's sound had, and I quote, "The sound changed a little now that Brian's joined the band. I think it's gotten more musical." These feelings would change dramatically once they entered the studio with producer Tony Platt. Lemmy would recall years later in the Motörhead documentary, The Guts, the Glory, quote, "Another Perfect Day was fucking torture. Brian, he'd take 17 hours doing a guitar track. It fucking took so long compared to the other albums. And then when it was released, everybody fucking hated it." So there you go. It's an album that I've always got the impression that misunderstood, maybe overlooked, or just downright disliked. For some reason, this album always, the first song I ever heard on this was Shine, which was on the No Remorse comp. Loved it. And I picked up this record, and yeah, it does a lot for me. But we're going to start with Kellen. I don't think you've heard this record previously to this album club, have you?
No, this is my first time with this record. And I guess there's a lot to, it's a large discography. But I guess when I would think of Motörhead, the Overkill is probably the first place I would go. Ace of Spades, it would be something with Fast Eddie. So I had not heard this record, and initial impression was it was a very different, just the sound of it. Probably what's unique about this record, and is also the same characteristic that would probably offend many people. So I guess my initial impression was I was caught off guard. You had lent a little bit of insight with the Thin Lizzy introduction last week. Mm-hmm. That was going to be a factor that played a role and would make the record sound unique. It absolutely did, but I could understand it having a polarizing effect when it was released. So makes sense.
But is it traditional heavy metal, Kellen?
Oh, I was like, how is he going to get in there? See me say it.
And then for anybody wondering what I'm talking about, last Friday on the show, we had Kellen on, and a big, very cerebral discussion, I would say, regarding, we each picked 5 records and discussed whether it classified as new wave of traditional heavy metal. What is new wave traditional heavy metal? Very good, long conversation, very deep. A lot of people, a couple of people in the chat and the stream comments even said how it seemed like a pretty deep. So a lot to unpack. it was a cool, something fun, something different. But Jim, what are your thoughts, first impressions of Another Perfect Day?
This was an album I pretty much avoided based on the reputation for a long time. I was like, I have no interest in hearing what Motörhead sounds like with the guy from Thin Lizzy. And it was, as with many things, Marty, it was with you, and you're like, you just need to listen to it. This is years ago. Did Zoller turn you on to this one, or did you just come across
this? Zoller turned me on to Thin Lizzy. I was already into Motörhead, and I heard
you already knew this
album.
Yeah,
I knew this album.
Yeah, but I didn't know it. So, but I listened to it with Marty and with definitely distrustful ears. And this is years ago, but I mean, by the end of the record, I was like, okay, this is great. You know, you would think that style of guitar playing just would not work with Motörhead, but for me, it really does. And I have to honestly say, I come back to Another Perfect Day as often as I do the classic lineup albums, and also Rock and Roll, which I love, and a lot of people don't love that one, but I really love that record. So. You know, it's great. It's absolutely utterly unique in this discography. Obviously, with Robbo on the guitars, and but it's is it a perfect album? No Motörhead album really is, but this is I think one of their best, honestly. Yeah, and I think that even though it was a combustible combination, Lemmy with Brian in the studio, I think what came out was something that stands up at the time. I can see how if I would have been in 1983 into Motörhead, and that was before my time. I didn't get into them until like 4 years later. It would have been a big, huge shift for me, to hear the classic stuff, with Fast Eddie than this, because it's utterly just utterly different, except for the bass and the drums and the vocal. I mean, well, okay, obviously the guitars, but the guitars are such a huge part of this record that I would have been taken aback too. But having bounced around the discography, being someone that got into Motörhead later, that shift wasn't as painful for me. It was just kind of at a distance. I was just like, well, I'm Iron Fist back and Orgasmatron and Rock and Roll, and that's it for me. I'm done. And but that first listen, made me a believer. So we'll dive into the specifics later. But
right on, TJ.
Yeah, so I was, full disclosure, the only motor I own the Lemmy movie. I have that, but I don't actually own any of their records. But I've always considered myself a fan. And I don't know why it isn't. I've never picked up any of their stuff, and I'm, this record was actually, because Marty mentioned this, and I'm like, it'd been popping up in my feed on Spotify, and I didn't realize, the provenance of it, if you will, whatever, when it come out and whatever, anything, and listening to it, the night you picked it, I put 2 tracks on before I went.
We listened to it at Fat Camp too, and you're like, wow, this record is really good. That was like the first time you ever really listened to it.
Yeah, and I was, I was like, this is cool. This is really, really cool. And I spun the hell out of it today. And it's like all this, everything that everybody's kind of pointing out. It's like, it's so, you hear this. It's like, wow, this is really different Motörhead. I mean, it is Motörhead, but it's just, there's all this other stuff that's kind of winding its way through it, and it all kind of just jumps out at you, because it is so very different, but so very singularly Motörhead at the same time. And no, my first impression of this record is just I was like, wow, this is really good. It's in my shopping list, so it's I was just really surprised, and so we'll get into more some of the other stuff, like the Thin Lizzy reference and all that stuff. It's like, I don't know if I really picked that out of it, but a lot of the other stuff, the other things, I know somebody mentioned, like it's their prog record, and that's like, yeah, I definitely was picking that vibe out of this too, for sure. But yeah, I was, it was a cool listen. My first impressions were really pretty high of this. It's pretty good.
Yeah, like I said, the No Remorse comp I picked up here a long time ago. New Moon Records, I got it used for a couple bucks, 2 LP set. I love the song Shine. That song really kind of stood out. Obviously it's thrown in amidst a bunch of classics, and it just stood out, more melodically charged, and I was interested. I ended up picking this up somewhere used on vinyl, and my first impression is the surprise that, Lemmy kind of models himself as a grizzled singer. His voice seems kind of forever ruined. But I mean, you're listening to this record, he can sing. He sings in key and some stuff. And that was a big surprise. And it's such a, me and TJ were talking before. I mean, leading up to this, there's all the albums are produced a certain way. It sounds like Motörhead, but Another Perfect Day's got kind of an 80s sheen on it sound wise. But yet still very Motörhead, that the distorted Rickenbacker bass tone, that blower bass tone right up in the forefront. And it really highlights how good of a musician Lemmy was. I mean, he's playing the shit out of some of these things. And he has just like like the Orgasmatron going down the track. The way he plays looks like the cover of Orgasmatron. It's just that, he gets in this groove and it's like almost percussive, but yet he can throw in these runs and, do these little musical highlights that offset what Robbo's doing. And it shows that Motörhead was more than just filth and grime, that there was some, Brian's contribution brought out a little of the class and some of the musical progress and talent that is contained within the musicians of this record. I love it. Obviously I picked it, but kind of a long-winded topic here. For the duration of his career, Lemmy proclaimed that Motörhead was a rock and roll band. Generally speaking, the culture surrounding both metal and punk have very staunch belief systems, preferences, and oftentimes a closed-minded, if not gatekeeping way of letting other people or styles of music into the club. Having said that, Motörhead seems to be one of the few anomalous bands that most people in the metal and punk genres can agree on. What do you think the unifying characteristic is that made Motörhead such a special, accepted band to so many people in the extreme music worlds? Jim.
This is a great question, by the way. And I also think, that, there's a lot to unpack, because there are so many reasons why I think that it appeals to both like very distinctive groups of music fans. And for me, it's everything, and I know that sounds like a cheap answer, but I'll dive in. It is the, absolute, craziness of their sound. It's loud, it's aggressive, it has that punk ethos behind it. It's very distorted. It's fast. The lyrics were super edgy for the time, especially when they hit the scene. They were they dressed in black when they hit the stage. Lemmy's not a classical beauty, if you will. You know what I mean? All these things appeal to the DIY ethic, that appeals to punk people, that appeals to metal people, they had openly a disdain for, religion. They were open about their, abuse of substances. And yet, they always brought it when they hit the stage, no matter what was going on. Any performance you see of Motörhead, they are just, crushing it. Even when as Lemmy began to age and his voice began to go, later on in years, the fact that he was still playing music of this aggression level at that age was just nothing short of amazing. And people would still, fill out venues to go, experience that. So I think it was everything. I think it's the speed of the music. I think it's the volatility of the music, that distorted bass that was, utterly unique at the time. The edgy lyrics, the dark image, it was just all of that together. Somehow, Lemmy was able to perfectly fuse, pure rock and roll, metal, and punk together. Even though he hated being called metal, I mean, there's plenty of songs in the Motörhead discography that you point at, just say that's just heavy metal. You know what I mean? So the reality is he merged all three of those and did it in such a unique way and aggressive way that there was something there for each of these communities to latch on to and to take and to run with and to take other and to also combine metal and punk in their own ways and, you know, create things like thrash and then death metal, black metal, whatever you have. I mean, I think that, you know, as important as Black Sabbath is to heavy metal, I think that Motörhead is that level of importance to extreme metal, because that's where, you know, there'd be no Venom, and if there's no Venom, you know, there's no black metal
Or
you know.
Bathory. I mean, Bathory. The first Bathory album's got a lot of Motörhead on it.
Yeah, it does. It does. So, you know, I think it just literally cannot be overstated, and also just the fact that, you know, one thing that I think that, you know, extreme metal fans and you know punk fans, hardcore fans look for in general is authenticity. You know, and what you got with Lemmy was what you saw with him is what you got. You know, what you see is what you get. I mean, that guy was who he was 100% of the time, all the time. You know, there was never any plasticity about.
He was never a knucklehead either. He's a smart dude.
He was a smart guy. You know, he spoke about politics and religion, you know, intelligently. His views, he backed them up, you know, with you know, explanations that made sense. And even though like his lyrics, you know, some of the times they're just, you know, silly and you most of the time though, if you look beyond the simplicity of his lyrics, there was some real life knowledge that he was sharing there. And what's odd is like I came to appreciate his lyrics more as I began to get older than I did when I was younger, you know. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, there was that too, and that's because again it goes back to the authenticity. He was always Lemmy all the time, and I think that you know people in our scenes, that's what we want. We want you to be real. You know what I mean? You know, if you say you hate Satan, well, burn a church down. Well, okay, that's black metal. You know, and the punk world, you know, if you say, you know, you believe a certain way, then you should talk about it all the time and not just like talk about it on stage and, you know, and, you know, not live your life accordingly. I mean, whenever you asked him about politics, he was very in line with his lyrical contribution. So it's a great question. And I think I give my opinion. So
right on. Kellen.
So I guess I'll start that with like the musical form part of the question. I think to Jim's point about while Sabbath may be considered the first metal band to some extent, or an important rock band that introduced heavy metal later on, I think they're really responsible for like the weight and like the dark atmospheric side of things. Motörhead is probably where we really start to see pushing of a pace.
The power,
like the velocity of the music gets, you know, gains greater steam with this band, and the role that played on within the new wave of traditional heavy metal to speed metal to thrash, like you could really all point towards Motörhead as potentially the first band that really introduced that side of things. But there's also like the rock, like so many times listening to not just this record, but what Motörhead in general, the rock side of things is there.
Oh yeah.
It never leaves. Like this band, and I mean this in a complimentary way, can like boogie. Like I you know, that's part of their record and their sound. But the other side of it is like the simplicity of it, where, you know, a band like Thin Lizzy, which turns really into Iron Maiden in a lot of ways.
Oh yeah. Twin leads.
Twin leads, more complex structure that is not completely throwing away some influence that prog rock introduced in the 1970s. Like here's someone who comes from Hawkwind and in some ways makes a clear departure in making incredibly sort of simple, structured songs that have a lot of life and energy to them. And I think punk fans could look at that relative to what was happening within the new wave of British heavy metal. And it was a clear contrast, right? You could latch onto a Motörhead song. It doesn't have the same sort of grand dynamic structure in the same way. So there's a certain kind of simplicity to their songs that is catchy and immediate that I think would appeal to a punk fan. And I guess the last part of this that I'll add in is like a cult of personality. Lemmy eternally lived as like the cool uncle. You know what I mean? Like
The dirtbag uncle.
yeah, he he never like he lived that life for better or worse and died living it. But I think he sort of galvanized an almost sort of like folk hero identity as a consequence. He, lived by those convictions, lived by this lifestyle, and I think whether you're a metalhead or a punk, like a commitment to an identity that's not just a performance character. Like this is who I am as a person. I think that resonated with both fan bases.
Yeah.
And the fact that he was unwavering through the years, now I think if you were to sit down with their peers, like in a lot of ways, people can look at Bruce Dickinson and he kind of seems like someone's dad, right? Like there's a certain kind of safety there where Lemmy always felt a little bit unhinged and you never knew what he was drinking or what he came in doing the night before. Like whether you believed it or not, I think that was endearing to the fans who saw him never break from who he was early in his career and sort of carried that throughout. So I think that always, whether he considered the band rock and roll and sort of resisted a metal identity, I think the metal community always forgave him for that because they knew how much he meant, right? And always saw like a kinship there. So I think that's important to hold on to, is just he's probably an example of someone who's lived by the principles that he exhibited early on in his career and sort of held through the end of his life.
Agree 100%, man.
Absolutely. TJ.
I've never. Motörhead has always been a rock and roll band to me. I've just never, but it's always presented itself in a way that that I could relate to because of the power of it, because of the unbridled nature of how they always approach songwriting and their sound, and it was never hard to take and cross one thing over to the other, where you could like even on this record, it's like there are bits in here where the double bass is going, and it's like there's all this, there's the metal in it, and they were just so easy to it's easy to slip between both worlds with this band. And I hate
to interrupt you, but Phil, like on the song Overkill, it was him farting around with a double kick, and they're saying that he's kind of the birth of thrash metal because of the way he plays on that song. The first time it was ever really captured in that manner,
right? And that's the thing. And to Kellen's point, it's you're getting bits and pieces from all these granddaddies of the genres, the darkness, the harshness, whatever. And with Motörhead, from the word go, is always kind of this, and Nasal Torment's kind of DIY punk stuff. I was literally thinking the same thing. They have this kind of self-starter DIY thing that's always kind of, even as they got huge and became, Motörhead, there's always been this kind of aesthetic about them that's always felt that way. Always felt kind of, to me anyway. And I agree, to Maze's point, I just always kind of felt that about them. And that's always something that I've always been attracted to in myself, but being in shitty little bands with no money and no attention, and you're trying to do things and you do stuff yourself and try to make things happen. But yeah, and but this, you can be in two places at once with Motörhead. For me, you can be in both sides. You can, the punk vibe and the sneering attitude and the middle finger to the world kind of stuff, and then the sheer the power of it, and so they're just able to kind of carry that mantle in their own way, and it's just rock and roll. And I don't know, I don't really have any real deep philosophical idea about it. It's just, for me, Motörhead has just always been a rock band that delivers on, can deliver on and out of both barrels, that, that scathing metal aesthetic and still have that scraping punky kind of snark to it, and Lemmy is such a singular character, and he's just such a, he just became this icon that, even, the pop divas and people, oh, Lemmy, I love Lemmy, and like, oh, really? What's your favorite song? Huh? None of that means anything to him, but he became, kind of, a myth in his own time, so an enigma, so to speak. But he was always, no matter what, I remember, like in the movie, who the hell were they? I can't remember who they were talking to, but when he was living in Los Angeles or wherever the hell he was living, and there's a little bar down the street from his apartment.
Well, at the Rainbow.
Yeah, and then he'd go in there and sit and play video poker all day
Mm-hmm.
and drink when he wasn't on tour or anything. And people would just come in and see him and just be like, holy shit, it's Lemmy, and then just hang out with him and sit there. And he would just never shoo anybody off, and just always personable, and always treated everybody with respect. And I think that just goes a long way for anybody like that, and everybody knew it. So it's just, I don't know what more can I really say. For me, Motörhead's always just been this really cool rock and roll band that did things their own way. They were faster, they were angrier, they were more abrasive than your average rock band, but it always had and the boogie. I mean, he's always brought the boogie in, and it's killer. It absolutely rules. And so again, I don't have any real big brain thing to say about it. It's just again, I've always considered myself a fan, and I just think they live in both of those worlds really well.
It's funny, with the quotes for him saying he remembers the time before rock and roll, which is crazy. Jimi Hendrix's roadie, which basically meant he went around and tried to find drugs for Jimmy. And but for me, what is the unifying factor? There's an honesty to it. I mean, I'm not going to say anything that everybody else here hasn't already so eloquently stated, but there's an honesty to Motörhead. There's a power to Motörhead, which very much appreciated by both punk and metal. The one unifying factor that I can think of right off the bat is the bass tone, distorted up front. I mean, Motörhead, for most of the career, there was a point where Phil Campbell and Wurzel were the twin guitar attack, but Motörhead was always a power trio. So he built this bass tone with that. Anybody that knows anything about basses and stuff, Rickenbacker has a tone. Listen to the early Sadists. That Rickenbacker tone, it cuts through distorted guitar, wall of distorted guitars. Rickenbacker's got a very distinctive tone. Add some distortion to it. Wow, it cuts like crazy. It's more powerful than the guitar in a lot of ways, and it appeals to both the punk and the metal aesthetic. And of course, you got Lemmy's gristled vocal style, and the absolute full frontal assault of Motörhead. I've seen Motörhead once, and who opened for him? Morbid Angel. Today's the day. So, I mean, here's a guy that's playing rock and roll, but has bands like Morbid Angel on their tour. That was one of the better shows I've ever seen. It was amazing. Just three guys making that noise and just so comfortable in their skin being what they are. And that's very alluring to both styles, I think. And oh shit, where's I going with this? Oh, I lost my train of thought. That sucks. But yeah, it was it's just kind of a lightning in the bottle thing. There isn't many bands out there that sound like Motörhead. And the fact that he supported bands like Morbid Angel on tour, but he's a lot like Phil Lynott from Thin Lizzy. Both of those guys, unlike guys like Steve Harris from Maiden, they hated punk. There are certain like new wave of British heavy metal dudes that hated punk. Motörhead and Thin Lizzy, they both loved it. Lemmy, he played on stage. He filled in with the Damned, bass player for the Damned for a while. He was on stage and friends with the Ramones. Phil Lynott had his own punk band. I mean, you embrace, there's a little bit of a nod of appreciation to that. It's reciprocated, so they're a well-rounded style. Yeah, it's rock and roll, but like TJ said, there's a boogie woogie aspect to some things. And their first album, to me, Devin mentioned that he thought it was their most punk album. It has a very punk aesthetic because it's a rough production, but it's very rock and roll too. Very rock. That's a very rock and roll album. And then this album is there's a lot of rock and roll on here to me as well, because of the wall of melody. And there's a song or two on here that you can tell that we're trying to aim for a little bit of a radio appreciation that I'm sure they never got. But even though they're shooting for this radio sheen, the song is still really good. I don't know. It doesn't completely sell out, but let's talk about the musicality and composition of Another Perfect Day. TJ, we'll start with you.
Well, I think it's got the whole record has a great Motörhead sheen all the way through it, and they don't ever deviate from that. And I can, judging by some of the comments you read about what Lemmy said about being in the studio, there must have been some, struggling, trying to push.
Live, Robbo was apparently pissed at Lemmy, and he would go on stage wearing ballet slippers, like short track shorts, and like a Loverboy headband, and it drove Lemmy nuts.
Yeah, and it's and I listening to this record, I kind of I'm feeling like I'm at because the Motörhead stank just drives through all these tracks, and the lyrics and everything. But then there's all this guitar work on here that it's so different and
very tasteful. It never gets overblown. It's all in the pocket.
It's all really good. It's just so different, and it just, I can only imagine there must have been some tense moments there where they were letting this happen. I didn't get a lot, the slick guitar lines, it's all really cool. None of it ever really loses any pacing for me. I think that they just, it's hard to really pick any of it apart. The songs are just also completely Motörhead. The style, there's nothing complicated about any of it. It's all straightforward rocking songs. Some of them are slower, some of them are faster. They get off into some really cool stuff. I'm picking up on the prog element, these little bits of prog stuff, and I'm picking out like some Alex Lifeson Rush style riffs and things like that. It was really, really kind of tripping me out, but and again, that 80s, like I had mentioned, we were talking, that there's this 80s vibe, this string that just kind of runs front to back through this record, and you can just hear, they were obviously trying. And that song, One Track Mind,
love that song.
I've heard that song many times prior to. I didn't, when it came out, I'm like, oh God, I know this song. I've heard this a bunch of times. That must have, maybe that was the one they were pushing to the radio. I don't know. I will say, I did want to point out, I was some of the lyrics, where is it? This in the chorus, the 2-lane highway, 2-hand car, 2-lane highway, too damn far, 2-faced women, 2-time guys, 2-faced women, 2 black eyes. That's that's a classic right there. Like, wow.
Shakespeare, man. Shakespeare.
Yeah.
Probably wouldn't fly in today's climate.
Yeah, I guess, leave that to the
neither
readers,
songs like Jailbait that are in there, on Ace of Spades, that not necessarily an acceptable song.
And I
ever.
do and then I do another one I really like in the chorus of Back at the Funny Farm, where I can't find the windows, but I got to get outside. Can you help me stand? It feels like both my legs have died. What was that injection? Because I think it's going wrong. I really like this jacket, but the sleeves are much too long. That's funny as shit. That whole track is just great. But yeah, I mean, it's just classic Motörhead done with a bit of polish that is, you're not really accustomed to hearing a little bit, the little bit of slickness that's a little bit unusual for me, to listen to the band. And again, I've heard so much of their stuff, and then listening to this, and it's really first time front to back in a record, and it's just like, wow, this is.
I find that really surprising. I mean,
and I know, all
these years, how did you evade listening to a full?
Crazy, because it's just like everybody has it, and it's just always there, and it's just like it's on, and you hear it all the time. I mean, I have the movie, but how do I know? I don't know. It's one of those things where it's just like, and Tim's in the chat. I will hand over my metal card to get a corner clipped for that one, if that will my previous ripping, busting your balls over bolt thrower. But but yeah, no, and again, this is I'm glad we did this record, and it's cool. Because I will definitely start. Jim broke out that box set last week in the dugout, and I'm like, ooh, me and box sets, it's a bad thing. But so yeah, but no, man, I mean, just the musicality and comp in this, it's not much to complain about. It's just classic Motörhead with some different guitar work going on that's really interesting and cool. There's just all kinds of cool little things here and there. It's really cool.
Jim.
Musicality and composition. Oh man, when planets collide, dude. Thin Lizzy is still to this day, and I know this is blasphemy for a lot of people out there. It's a hard sell for me.
Did you check out Thunder and Lightning?
I did check out Thunder and Lightning. I definitely think that's like the one album I would listen to.
That was my gateway. Yeah.
That one I can get behind. The rest of it's just not strong enough for me. It just sounds like it just sounds like rock, but not rock like this. Not heavy and intense. And a perfect combination of that, punk aesthetic, distorted bass, filthy drumming, gravelly vocals with this crazy dreamlike, and as TJ said, like almost like a prog-like guitar.
Yeah.
I say Robbo. Is it Robbo? Am I saying it wrong, Marty?
It's Robbo.
Okay, Robbo. All right. Robbo's playing is like immediately what made this record different for me. When Back at the Funny Farm begins, we all know that like Lemmy loves that 5th fret to the 7th fret on the A string, pick like he does that in a lot of songs.
The chug, you got the railroad track going down the track.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's perfectly fine. But it started out, I was like, okay, bass riff familiar. It sounds a lot like Iron Fist, which itself sounds a lot like Ace of Spades, and on and on and on. Yeah. But then suddenly, like this, reverb dripping, lead sound tone just like comes awash over that, and I'm like, whoa, what is this? I mean, it was like Robbo was immediately saying, "Here's my statement. This is going to be a different band now." And for me, like from that point on, like literally at the beginning of the album throughout, his stamp is everywhere. And it made this album really, really interesting for me because I didn't know what was going to happen, and I liked that about a Motörhead album, even though, their penchant for staying close to who, they were musically is something that's, from the beginning to the end of their discography, it is interesting. He was able to really take this Motörhead thing and really kind of make it, with Lemmy's help, his own. So yeah, I think it takes, a really great musician to be able to do that, but to not, and this is where Lemmy's a great musician and for Lemmy to stand up against someone that's like an amazing, caliber of player and not be, a railroaded into, changing Motörhead completely. It just seems like this perfect amalgamation of like really, really stellar, dreamlike, guitar playing that sort of like you kind of drift off if you really kind of listen to the riffs and you know, the lines, you know, the leads are amazing, but leads aren't what is interesting. Even the riffs behind the leads are what's interesting. It's like what Rob did as a rhythm player, and the melody lines, not so much the solos, but the melody lines he did. But always ever present is Lemmy's bass mix, keeping it heavy, keeping it intense, and keeping that same vocal delivery and lyrical topics, you know, at the forefront. You know, it was almost like neither one of them were going to back down from who they were. We know Lemmy wasn't, but let's give Robbo some credit here. He didn't back down either, because that is 100% his guitar playing, you know, and together. And, you know, we've all heard over the years about, you know, combustible experiences between, you know, thick-headed and talented musicians in the studio. Well, you can hear that, you know, sort of like you can hear that fire in this album. And I think we're all the better for it, you know, because what ended up, you know, coming out of it was something that's very original. You know, I really, and I know we're not in like favorite songs yet, but I got to call out "Dancing on Your Grave" because, you know, man, the guitar line in that song, to TJ's point, it really reminded me of Rush. Like it's, you know, I mean, but it's just like, but it still works as a Motörhead song. But, you know, when it gets to the verse, it's just loud. You can just see Lemmy. He's just like, you know, he's got his neck up in the air. He's screaming in that mic. He's playing high up on the Rickenbacker. It's cutting through it. Like it is such an amazing song. It is so unique, and yet it's still Motörhead. It is "Dancing on Your Grave." You know, I mean, what a great title. And, you know, and I think it's like another thing that guitar playing style did on this record is that, you know, we associate Motörhead with speed and aggression. You know, I was even alluding to that in our discussion about this week's question. But in this song, it's a mid-tempo banger, but yet I think it's absolutely one of the strongest, if not the strongest song on the record. And I think that sweet spot for, you know, Robbo and Lemmy to come together was that mid-tempo, because then it just feels like everything got loud, and it's not like a wash with, like, you know, just a freight train just coming at you. It's just this like wall of awesomeness. and so, yeah, again, I completely attribute it to, you know, these guys, extremely high caliber musicians, you know, coming together, trying to make something work. Ultimately, it didn't on stage, but man, in the studio, I think it really did. So.
Kellen.
Well, I will be the dissenting vote here. So, but I agree. The tipping point for me. So I'm so happy, like, because Jim and I almost have the identical sort of moments of realization during listening to this record. Right, it starts off that boom, 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 like, hell yeah, this is a Motörhead. I'm on point. And then the ba-da-da, like that lead lick, and then you're talking about that 80s sort of reverb drenched sound, and it's not like poorly produced by any means. It's actually a very well sorted out record. We'll get to production notes later, but this was the biggest, I guess, obstacle for me when it'll even come up in my closing thoughts, is what do you want from this band? Because I really, if I had to point to one song on this record that set my hair on fire, which is what Motörhead what I love about them, I couldn't do it on this record. They never get to that point. It is a much more well-behaved record for me. And that, even though like Shine and Back at the Funny Farm, like I was still kind of good to go, right? Once we got to Dancing on Your Grave, the exact same guitar point that he's talking about there, I didn't go, ooh, that sounds like Rush. It was like someone let like AOR in the room.
Oh, like, I mean, there's certainly an element of that.
And when you mentioned like aiming for some sort of commercial interest, that little exact same part that Jim is talking about, yeah, I was like, oh man, like turn up that Boston. Here we go. And
it sounds like a Boston riff. Yeah. But Boston rules, so
yeah. But I know plenty of metalheads who love that band, who love Boston, but it just felt like what an interesting identity shift. So I actually went back and there's for anyone who's watching, Marty and Alan did an amazing deep dive on Motörhead with Chris Black.
5, almost 6 hours long.
It was a long go, but
it was good. It was good.
But it was interesting. Chris mentioned how it was apparent how influential guitarists were in the songwriting. It's not just the shift here with Brian writing versus the riffs that like Eddie, it had a major impact. It wasn't like primarily Lemmy's songs that Brian just came in and stepped on. He had a major influence in terms of the songs they were writing. And it's all over this record. There is something a bit more sort of comfortably mid-paced and approachable about the entirety of this record. It's still at its heart a Motörhead song, like the rock stuff, that driving bass tone 100% is there, but it always, during the course of this, it felt so well mannered and well behaved. I never had that, like what I wanted from Motörhead, and potentially why I have a sort of limited experience with the discography is there's a certain kind of identity that I have really sort of honed in on what I want from this band. And I'm a little bit less patient, obviously, for some of the other songwriting choices.
Sure.
But like, there's some really interesting moments. So One Track Mind, that song, what I love about it is there's tons of, like, to its mid pace, there's like a swagger in that entire song. It's got tons of personality. It's not necessarily complicated, but like, it's also through sort of Lemmy just rides that song out, and you get the most space, I think, for Brian's solo work. The solo on that song, I think, stands out just because the amount of breathing room he has on it. Excuse me. But I had the same sort of like AOR moment on I Got Mine. The intro to that song, it's just the intro line is a little bit smooth. And for me, the overarching theme for this record, it is still, you hear it, Lemmy's voice, Lemmy's bass tone, you'll recognize it. It's, immediately Motörhead. But the major thing I would want to get across is just how sort of smooth, even keeled. The metaphor I'll leave you with is when I was much younger, and I got a cold, if my mother wasn't around, my dad'd be like, "This is what I'll give you," and instead of giving me like NyQuil or whatever, he'd pour a shot of whiskey and then put like a teaspoon of honey in it.
Hot toddy.
Yeah, there we go.
Basically.
Yeah, and that was what that's what this record sounded like to me. There's a certain level. It's still a Motörhead, but just a little bit of warmth and honey going on to it.
Yeah.
I love that.
All right. Well, for me, the thing that I really like about this record, and it's a very melodically charged album, obviously, and it's still, I like Jim saying that there's 2 members in the band that aren't going to give up. I mean, there's a Brian Robertson. In fact, another reason that pissed Lemmy off was Brian was refusing to play Motörhead classics live. Didn't want to play them. He just wanted to play his stuff, which, God, a band, like, you can't do that. You're getting into a band. You gotta toe the line a little bit. Dio hated singing Ozzy songs, hated it, but he still did it. Live Evil. I mean, did a good job. Is it right? It's not right, but you still got to do it. So I like that fact. And listening to this album this week on headphones, there's the main lines of the song that are very predominant, but the thing that makes it a little proggy to me, you can hear all these guitar layers underneath here. There's so much shit like the sugar aspect. He just took these songs, he took this foundation provided by Filthy and Lemmy, and just built this tapestry of melodic guitar lines. I love it. I love it. And I just think it all works together really well. The hooks are very predominant, and it's got there's a beauty element to it, which I know with Motörhead, I can see where Kellen's coming from. And I don't disagree with what he's saying. I just like it. I'm not afraid of Motörhead being a little bit different for a record. You know, would this have worked going forward? Do I want 3 more records like this? I don't know. But, you know, after 1916 is a great record, by the way. Anybody check that record out. Also, the Mickey D, I think it's Mickey D's debut with Sacrifice. Great record. But then after that, they all just kind of mush into this, they mush together for me. But this record is exceptional. I love the guitar layering and just the endless hooks. They're just so melodically pleasing to me. And it's fun to listen to. You know, I think that's the rock and roll side of this. You know, they're not punishing you here. You're gifted some uplifting moments. You're gifted some really catchy songs. You know, the juxtaposition between, you know, the melodic, pretty elements of Robbo's playing up against that, you know, locomotive bass tone and the, you know, Lemmy's rasp, which Robertson gives him the ability to actually sing in key, to actually be a little more melodious with his singing. It's still Lemmy, but he shows that he isn't just a screamer. He can sing. I mean, he's done it on like Hellraiser, some other more rock and roll boogie woogie songs in their later catalog. You know, shit he's done with Ozzy. He can sing. He's a very talented musician. He just, you know, he kept Motörhead pretty much pure all the years. And this record to me stands out because it is so different from the pack. And I can see how that's a double-edged sword. I can see why people, you know, the diehards, it might be tough for them, but I came at it not as a diehard, just a fan of good music. And I've been watching a lot of the classic era. I've been watching a lot of Filthy and Fast Eddie live stuff, and they're great. They were so good. And just to have that much power as a 3-piece. And but this was a good change. It was just really good songwriting, catchy. I'm a fan. Obviously, I picked the album. Let's talk about the production. Jim, we'll start with you. I'm gonna go potty. I'll be right back.
Cool. Yeah, you know, the production, I think, man, I mean, whoever was in there in what had to be, you know, like a little bit of chaotic, you know, and bantering between Lemmy and Brian, you know, had a stout heart, I'm sure. But because, you know, what he was able to do was still make this album sound extremely professional, but yet still Motörhead, you know. Is it as raw as what came before? No, it's not, you know. And, you know, and those multiple hours that Brian spent, you know, on his guitar tracks, you know, are probably a huge part of the reason. That and the fact at this point, you know, Motörhead had been putting out full lengths for 6 years, and you know, so I think that you know, they were probably had a little bit more of a, you know, a front from the record company to, you know, experiment a little bit more, and certainly Brian took a huge you know, huge advantage of that. But you know, it really does work for me, though. I think that if you had taken, you know, the classic era, you know, production values and thrown, you know, Brian's, you know, guitar playing into that world, it would have sounded, you know, that, you know, unholy word to Lemmy, it would have sounded inauthentic. You know, it wouldn't have sounded right. You know, it just would have sounded like somebody who comes towards music from a completely different direction from, you know, Fast Eddie, you know, biting on his, you know, approach. And instead, you know, they went a different direction with their production choices, whether it was by happenstance or choice, I don't know, but I would think, you know, Robbo coming from Thin Lizzy was by choice. You know, they were going to go into like a more, you know, a less chaotic kind of a sound, a less like live sound, if you will. You know, definitely one that's rife with multiple tracks. You know, with Brian's guitar. I mean, you know, there's plenty of Motörhead songs where, you know, in the classic area where there's nothing but Lemmy's bass behind the leads and stuff, you know, or there's nothing but Lemmy's bass behind like one take fast Eddie, you know, rhythm track. You know, on this, I could be wrong, but I don't think there's a single song on here that doesn't have a guitar track as well as Lemmy behind his lead playing, which is, you know, at this point in Motörhead's career, not something that it wasn't unheard of. There's plenty of songs that had guitar all the way through in the classic area, but not everyone. And this one, just that fact alone showed you that, you know, Brian came from a different world musically, and you know, and man, on paper, it shouldn't work. You know, I mean, and that's why I stayed away from this. I did not care. I was like, what, a Thin Lizzy guy played on a Motörhead album? I don't ever want to hear that. I have zero interest in hearing that. And I was, you know, I was slapped and made to realize that, hey man, it may sound crazy, but it works. And the producer, the production people, the engineers, the mixers, all the guys that were involved, whoever they were, you know, were able to, you know, make, you know, it wasn't just the musicians. I do think that those guys that were twisting the knobs, we got to give them some credit, because there is a perfect balance between this dreamlike quality of Brian's riffs and especially his melody lines, and the aggressiveness of Filthy and Lemmy together. You know, pushing those together, it completely works. Shine. It's funny. Like, we've got Shine and we got Rocket. Not the greatest choices for song titles in Lemmy's repertoire. Luckily, we've got Dancing on Your Grave to balance that out a little bit, and Marching Off to War. But having said that, Shine has one of the coolest beginnings in the whole album. Where they
Die You Bastard.
Yeah, Die You Bastard. I love that. And there's a great scream he does on that song too. He's, I mean, I was like, yes, Lemmy, yes. He closes the album in pure Motörhead style. I think it's the second to last song on that one. No, it is the last song. My bad. Yeah, closes it great. But on Shine, they do this right at the beginning of the song. It's like this ascending riff, like, and it just, with the bass and Robbo's guitar, it just sounds so cool and done in a way that you can tell right off the bat that it's a cool idea, but it wasn't something that Fast Eddie would have done, you know, and you know, the production around, you know, those guitars doing that ascending like intro together, you know, help make it work, help make it stick, and you know, and land. And so I do think that you know, that, you know, again, that particularly, you know, dreamlike, reverb drenched in some cases, there's a lot of delay. You know, this guy Robbo liked his pedals. I mean, he definitely did. And you know, where, like someone said in the chat, and I agree, it's like, you know, Lemmy, it's like, you know, bass, Rickenbacker chord into a Marshall stack. You know, yeah, I mean, you couldn't have two more different, you know, sounds and approaches, but man, it just came together. And I think that, you know, the mix and, you know, the mastering, everything really, you know, contributed to it being a success.
TJ.
What are we doing? Production?
Yeah.
Okay. I had to make sure I wasn't still muted. Yeah, I mean, the production, I really like the production on this because there's a lot of life in it, in my opinion, anyway. It's still, you know, they still keep everything sounding, you know, like a skanky Motörhead record, but they clean it up just enough to make it kind of presentable, so to speak. You know, they dust a little, you know, dust it off a little bit and polish the edges here and there, but it still has that kind of that Motörhead feel throughout the production. But again, there's this kind of this 80s polish on it that's kind of unmistakable. And you know, I don't really have any real big criticisms to levy against any of it. It's really listenable, you know, and I feel like that was, you know, they were doing, you know, a lot of different stuff for this band on this record, hence the you know, controversial nature of it, I suppose you could say. But again, I think it's really good. It just comes across really well, and everything kind of presents itself. All the instruments are there. The mix is really good. It's it's a little loose in spots. It's tighter in other places. The guitar, and it's like Jim was saying, it's like he definitely, the his leads and stuff, his lead tones were pretty drastic, but good. He was using a lot of delay and stuff on his leads and shit like that, and so it was pretty cool. Definitely a different approach for Motörhead for sure, compared to some of the other stuff. But overall, it really well done in my opinion.
Yeah, production for me. Tim's point here. It's kind of funny he mentions this about the drums, the bass drums and the toms buried in the mix. This isn't that type of record for me. I don't even consider the drums on this record. The fact that maybe the kick and the toms aren't predominant, as far as I'm concerned, Filthy is just laying down a tempo because I'm not paying attention to the drums. I'm listening to everything else. I'm listening to the bass. I'm listening to the multi layers of guitars. So the fact that the drums might be a little tweaked on here, or could have been tweaked, didn't even really come into my field of vision or field of perception until you mentioned it, Tim. But I really like the life in this production. You listen to albums like Iron Fist doesn't have a great production. It's a good album. I know the band is kind of so. I think Fast Eddie produced that. Lemmy let him do it, and they were arguing the whole time. And it's not a great production. Ace of Spades. One thing about the Motörhead production is it's very, I don't know. I don't want to say compressed, but there's not a lot of this in the production. It's very straight ahead. The way the album starts, it's going to sound the same when it finishes. There's no deviation from this overall sound. Whereas this album, consider it the 80s sheen, the reverb. I don't know what it is, but it seems a little more life in the production for me. Just the fact that the bass is so loud. I love the bass tone on this. I love the bass tone on this record. It's just blower bass. It's blower bass. It's Blackie from Voivod blower bass style. I love it. But yet it still has a clear ring to it. And the guitar tone, he may have a pedal board. If you can buy replace a closet door and put pedals all over it. I don't care. It sounds great. He knows what his sound is, and he nails it. And he has fun with it. It sounds like, well, it probably wasn't fun, all the arguing they did in the studio, but I don't know. It's like I said, lightning in a bottle situation. This is one of my favorite, if not the favorite Motörhead record. I love the songs on it, and I like the production. It's just fun. It's just a fun record. There's a lot of life and light in it. And it seems like they're rising up out of the gutter on here, and they're embracing more of a classy side on here, which Robbo brought to them. Not saying that there was no class. I mean, obviously they had a song called No Class, but there's just a kind of a Lemmy's a smart guy, but there was a dirtbag element to Motörhead. And here it seems like Robbo tried to move on from that and try to push them into more musical. Likely even Lemmy, the quote I read at the beginning saying how, he's just more musical. They've gotten better musically with him. And you can tell Fast Eddie's a great guitar player, good songwriter, but Brian Robertson brought a level of musical sophistication and class to Motörhead that it may not have really experienced before. And I'm down with it. I dig it. Least favorite songs, Kellen.
So I'll jump in and give my production thoughts.
Oh, shit. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I thought I did you first. I'm sorry.
We are here for each other.
Right.
I'll help you out.
I've had about 6 twisted teas since we started this. So I started drinking before this. Anyway, go ahead.
Too many hot toddies. Okay.
You've had enough opinions for one night, Kellen. Just move along.
He already says you didn't like the record. He's out.
So I just want to follow up. I do think you're onto something in your description, Marty. Like, you know, in listening to this record this week, I was comparing and contrasting it with Overkill for me. And so much of that record sort of lives in like the mid range.
Yeah.
When I would listen to this, to your point, it feels to me fleshed out is the way I would describe it. Like there's greater body to this record. I totally agree though with Tim's point. Like it's the chaotic sort of whatever presence that the drums had previously with Phil, like that they're just not like that was a driving force.
This isn't that kind of album though.
No,
it's
not.
a different. It's
totally
different.
not. It's totally not. But
he
like,
wanted it. Phil wanted Brian in the band, so he was ready to accept that.
And he's a fan of Thin Lizzy. Like I think I agree in terms of the personality on the record. He feels very much like someone who's just kind of keeping some kind of structure to these songs.
Yeah.
To let Lemmy and Brian really shine. I agree that when you're listening to it, it feels very much like almost, I don't want to say an afterthought, but like he does not have the same sort of charisma and presence that he would have on other records. So,
sure.
But I agree that like when Jim brought up that like this record, if it had that production, would be a mistake. You needed this level of your whatever sophistication or a little bit more clarity to the songwriting and the production to sort of mirror one another. If you had given this, prior production when it was really a little bit rougher, I don't think it would have worked well for the songwriting. So I can take that and spill into least favorite songs.
Go for it.
So I think we already heard the divisive opinion I have with the more AOR focused songs here. So yeah, Dancing on Your Grave is like the take it or leave it song for me. For people who probably love this record, that song's going to work well for you. For me, it was like a what is happening here kind of moment. The other what is happening here, also the true like boogie rock moment comes on Rocket. That piano in the background. I mean, I kind of love it, but I'm like, this is not the Motörhead I go for. I will say my favorite and least or the two favorite songs that for me are the opener and the closer. I do the way it opened with that driving sort of Rickenbacker tone on Funny Farm, like that I was completely on board. And to close with Die You Bastard. I mean, it's not only like the song title is great, but I feel is one of the more upbeat tracks on this record. And while it may not be sort of the cult of personality that Another Perfect Day has in the discography, like why people love sort of the unique character to it, it is a reminder that this band is still holding on to that element. They've never lost touch with that. This was just a different sort of artistic exploration for them. So the opener and the closer are my two favorite songs of this record.
Right, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Kellen. I got lost in. I tried to shuffle off the rotation. I forget. All right, Jim. Favorite, least favorite.
Yeah, as Kellen alluded to, completely disagree. I love Dancing on Your Grave. That's my favorite song on the record. I love the crazy, Alex Lifeland style riff that Brian plays on it. I like how it repeats with, it starts out like played on acoustic, then it's distorted before the verse rather. So it makes it sound heavier. It also it makes its way into the chorus of the song. I like the riff behind the main verse. It just, like I mentioned earlier, they play it high on the neck, and just I feel it feels very powerful to me. I love the title track, Another Perfect Day. Robbo does some really cool down picking on the chorus. I'm sorry, on the verses. And then if you pay attention, you go back and listen to it. And I didn't hear this on initial spins, but as I listened to it more and more, there's these delay field non-distorted flourishes that like Robbo does, and they're like dling, dling, these like kind of clean little thing, like very quick, very brief. If you go back and listen to it, they're there, kind of buried in the mix amongst the distortion, but it's all those little elements that
love the layering on this. It's very cool.
Exactly. All those little elements, all those layering, like that
shit they can never do live with only one guitar player.
They can never do it live. But it made for a really interesting Motörhead song. Having said that, I do agree with Kellen on, Die You Bastard is a killer closer. That song is kind of like, for me, the purest Motörhead song on this record, lyrically, speed wise. But even here, I think that Robbo's guitar playing, especially at the beginning of the song when it first starts, gives it more of another Perfect Day character. Like it's still, kind of it would stand out if it was like, played or produced this way on any other Motörhead album. So definitely those are my favorites. Dancing on Your Grave, Die You Bastard. Marching Off to War is another great one. I like the lyrics in that song too. Some really cool alternate picking and wah pedal usage going on there. So those are my takes on it. And for more of that dreamy stuff, I Got Mine has a lot of that dreamy guitar playing. So if you're looking for that, check that one out.
All right, Tej.
I guess standouts for me were Back at the Funny Farm, Shine, Dancing on Your Grave, Turn You Around Again. I like the whole record. I don't think there's a stinker in here at all, really, in my opinion. I really enjoyed it. It was a really cool listen. I don't have anything where, with these ones, these tracks here, just, there was just cool stuff that stuck in my head, lyrics not being the least of which, but, it's just a great listen, and it's got all kinds of really cool stuff on it. I got nothing but praise. So,
I picked some TJ likes. Yay me! Woo! Wow, put a mark on the wall somewhere. Anyway,
I'm about to pay you back here in a minute.
Yeah, great. I'm sure. I could hardly wait. Anyway, again, I don't dislike anything on this record. I have a few songs I like more than others. Shine is a favorite. I love the blower bass up front, such a smooth and energetic groove. The whole song feels like an ongoing hook. It's hard not to like that song for me. Dancing on Your Grave. I love the musical and uplifting composition and the feel of it. So melodic in the leads / melodies. The layers give this a 70s hit of nostalgia. And I think Kellen sang Boston, that I mean, that's a riff that has been done. I recognize that riff instantly, and it's not because of Motörhead. It's from something else, but there's a nostalgic, and I'm like, oh, that works. One Track Mind. Love the song. Bluesy crawl to this one. Awesome grit and groove. Love the change in key in the chorus. It amplifies the impact of the song. It's well-written song. I dig it. Marching Off to War and Rocket. These two are the most proggy to me. There's proggy moments and layering in the music breaks, especially. Like after the solo, they like go into this thing. You can hear it. It's very proggy to me. Both tracks feel the most mature and advanced. It seems like they were Brian was trying to push them into a different direction here. Kind of just doing, this is a music break after the solo. No big deal, Lem. But Hawkwind's got a lot of prog to it too, so he's not a stranger to this style. And on these two songs in particular, they kind of get in, they hint at it a bit, and it's cool. I Got Mine. Twisted riffing offsets highly melodic guitar work, which allows Lemmy to demonstrate his vocal diversity. He sings in key on this one for the chorus and shit. Another Perfect Day. This is probably one of my least favorites on the album, but I still like the song. It's a great song, but perhaps the least hooky or memorable for me. I Got Mine. I really like this one too. It feels like an attempt at radio acceptance. This is the one that really stood out for me as more radio friendly. It's got a more commercial sound to it initially, but there's little twists that go dark in some of the riffs. It's kind of you could tell that there's a battle here. Like, I'm going to take your riff. I'm going to add Motörhead right here, not this pretty ballet slipper shit. It's a great song, though. I dig it. Tales of Glory and Die You Bastard. They're strong songs, but less instantly memorable to me. But Die You Bastard is killer. I've been listening to this conveniently on Spotify, and there's a bonus track, Turn You Around Again. That's at the end, I think. Yeah, it must have been a bonus track. I thought that was the end of the song. I didn't listen to the record. Powerful chug, like a train going down the track, but very catchy. So I've got no complaints. Hey, Craig, what's up, man? Hey, there we go. Another one.
Fighting words.
Kellen doesn't like this record, Craig. Get him. Anyway, judgment, final thoughts. Kellen, we'll start with you.
So I actually think this is a record for the Motörhead diehard. I think this is for someone who not only like gets what everyone knows about what Motörhead is, but wants greater insight into what makes the band, unique beyond sort of initial impressions, or even like what you hear on the radio, right? Like if there were like a list of metal songs that I have heard 5 billion times, Ace of Spades is going to be up there, right? But it hasn't diminished sort of the importance of the band. This sounds totally different though. And I think for people who want to dig deeper into Motörhead and look at all the different facets that the band had to offer over the years, like this is a good example of like it breaks the mold. Well, it's not my my thing. By all means, like if you're someone who think you knew who Motörhead was and you have not heard this record, or you felt like all the classics, you've heard, you're interested in something new, this is totally different and kind of a change of pace for sure. So while it may not, be an immediate go out and grab it for me, for people who love this band and you have not heard the record, I would recommend you give it a chance.
I'm just busting your balls too, Kellen. I think
it's all good.
This is a safe space here, my friend. But I bet you it's one of those records that 10 years down the road, someday when I'm dead and gone or whatever, you're gonna put this on again, listen to it, like, oh, I get it now.
There's that Boston riff.
Absolutely. TJ, final thoughts.
I don't know. Gets I don't know. It gets a whole sleeve of Oreos. 8.5 out of 10. I don't know. It's a great record. I'll own it soon.
Jim.
I absolutely love this record. It's one of my favorite Motörhead albums. I earlier didn't, mention a song that I did not like, and that was for a reason, because I do like every song on this record. Whenever I put this on, I listen to the whole album every time.
Mm-hmm.
Even though this was just a one shot for them, it was meant to be, because I really enjoy this record. I feel like, when I listen to Motörhead, usually it's kind of like I'm in that punch in the face kind of a mood. But when I'm in that kind of just kick back sort of a mood, I want to kick back, but I still want to hear something aggressive. Like, this is that album for me. It's that sweet spot, driving alone with the windows down, no one's around. I'm not screaming along Ace of Spades. I'm just listening, and this is that Motörhead album for me. It's, Another Perfect Day is a great title for it. And so for me, this is 9 out of 10 all day. It'll be a life spinner for me. So.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I picked the album. I love it. I think it's great. And I am fine with the fact that this is a one and done in their catalog. I really am. I think it makes it more special. I get why people don't like it, because it is just enough Motörhead, I think, but there is definitely the Thin Lizzy part of it is all over this record. I mean, Brian definitely rubbed his stink all over it, which is great. And I think Motörhead getting pushed out of their comfort zone a little bit, I think it's good for them, because after this record, they go back into their comfort zone to varying degrees of success. I mean, there's some good records. There's some bad records. There's some records that are just I'm ambivalent towards. I mean, we did that dive with Chris Maycock, and I'm like, oh yeah, I've got a bunch of their records. This should be no problem, until I realized how many records they put out over the years. And it got to a certain point where every record sounded the same. I mean, to the point where, not in a good way, it was just kind of like, okay, it's the same formula over and over and over and over again. But I get it. Bands like this were never meant to go the test of time. I mean, like, look at bands like I think of like LG Petrov when he passed away. I got to thinking about that guy a little bit. I never knew him. I never met him. But here's a guy when he's in his teens writing, like Emperor. I mean, all these people were in their teens when they're writing these iconic records. They didn't set out to do this. They set out to write cool songs. And it just ended up being these classics. And all of a sudden you're 16 years old, screaming your brains out. And all of a sudden you're 40, 50 years old, still screaming your brains out. There is no way, in any way impossible part of the imagination, you would have imagined your career would be this. Maybe, the rock and roll dream, Lemmy had it, maybe he always wanted to be a rock and roller and this is how it went. But imagine slogging it out for 40, 50 years as Motörhead. Imagine it. There isn't a lot of room for growth. There isn't a lot of room for experimentation. So that's why an album like this, granted, it might not be a favorite of everybody's, it's still important because it's something. This doesn't look like the rest of it. And and because of it, like I said, Robertson brought a level of class to Motörhead that wasn't necessarily there to begin with, and it was never there again. And it's one of my favorite records by them. Absolutely. It is my favorite record by them. And I like a lot of their early stuff. I love the original Power Trio. A lot of the records are great. And I like some stuff after with Wurzel and Phil Campbell. But Motörhead, they had consistency, but they didn't necessarily have top-notch quality for me. They just don't. They just kind of became a parody of themselves, essentially, even though I respect them being true to themselves. But I love this record, and favorite Motörhead record, and it was fun. Thanks for humoring me, guys, and picking this. I didn't know how it would go. I'm glad it went okay. And I didn't know, Kellen, what you would think about this one. And you had a lot of great points on it. And I don't disagree with your points. They're definitely there. But yeah, that's it. Motörhead, Another Perfect Day. For me, it's a 9 out of 10 record. Straight up. I mean, very few records are perfect, although For Victory is perfect. Guess what, everybody? TJ's picking. Get ready. Thank goodness it's winter time because I got my sweater ready. I'm going to shave my fat
He's no elder.
English bulldog so it pretends to be a hairless cat. She doesn't
prepare to be disappointed.
Get ready for some shitty prog shitty shit.
Well,
he doesn't even know. He's got a stack of CDs there. He hasn't even decided yet.
I am so freaking conflicted. I've been very busy, I don't know. Serious question. Should I play it safe or do you want to be annoyed? Just answer the question.
Somewhere in the middle, in between those two extremes.
No. Play it safe.
This is your decision. You do what you want to do.
I'm going to make the choice, but I need you.
We've had a couple weeks of actually really fun listening experiences, and I'm sure whatever you're going to pick is going to fuck it up. So go ahead and pick whatever you want to pick.
Just do me the solid. Just do you want to be aggravated or should I play it?
I don't want to be aggravated.
He doesn't want. That's one. He doesn't want to be aggravated.
There will be retaliation. If there's aggravation, there's retaliation, and I can make it way worse for you. Trust me.
I can live with it.
Grown ass men singing about dinosaurs. Get ready, bitch. Hey, Tommy Mayer, thank you so much. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much.
So I got one, no aggravation. So two more.
Okay. I have to say I will be in Austin next week, so I don't feel like I'll be able to really contribute to this. I would love to see everyone here tortured, but I don't feel it's fair to throw you under the bus and then leave you.
Oh, come on.
Thanks, Tommy.
So Kellen's not going to be here next week. Is that what we're
Right.
hearing now?
Yes, yes.
Well, thanks for ruining the whole thing.
I'll go with Marty. I'll go with Marty. I'll side with him. So
No,
What did I even say? I was ranting. I wasn't even
you
paying
don't want to
attention.
be
Oh,
annoyed.
so
I don't
fine,
wanna be annoyed.
fine. So we will go. I'll play it easy. I'll take it easy on everybody, and we will just do Night. Voices
Oh.
of Cronian Moon.
That's a good album.
I know.
You seem disappointed by that, though.
I'm surprised he picked it. What
Do you want me to take it back? I can take it back
you
right now.
can't take it back. It's too late.
I can take it back right now. I've got a Deaf Heaven record right here.
Oh, that would have been bad.
No, it would have been good because this is a good record. Cute.
Yeah. Let me get the name of this. So the proper Voices of Cronian Moon. Let me copy this and paste it so I don't misspell anything. So everybody in the chat can get this. Night, Voices of the Cronian Moon is next week's Heavy Metallurgy Album Club. Kellen will not be here. We may have a guest. We might just go at it as a power trio. We'll see how it all jams out. But yep, we will be here next Wednesday. Show notes for Friday. We'll be joined by Alan. May or may not be here. He's got oh, dude, that actually that is such a good idea. I love me some Morden Hogan. Oh man, love it. Anyway, Lazarus, Dwayne will be here joining me as a co-host on Friday, as will Scott Waters from the Scott Waters channel. He also does No Life Till Metal. Be great to have him back as well. We're going to have a good time. We're going to talk about things that make us thankful since it is the season of Thanksgiving. And it's going to be basically a playlist. We're going to just talk about what we've been spinning and things we're thankful for. So it should be fun. Maybe we'll see Alan. Maybe we won't. I know he's got some family stuff going on trip-wise. So yay or nay on him, we will see. But gentlemen, as always, I am thankful for all of you. Thank you so much for joining me every week and doing this. Always a ton of fun. We have such a great time, and I love it. I love it, love it, love it. And I'm also thankful for everybody in the chat. Thank you so much, people, for your contributions. Tommy Mayer, thank you so much for the super sticker, and everybody else for joining us every week. We really appreciate you. And anybody have anything to add before we jump?
No, got nothing. But thanks everyone for stopping by. And well, should we tease the idea? Are we going to do an album club best of for the end of the year?
We could do a best of what we picked for the year, but there's going to be like a year end of which I hope that all you three can join us on for the Heavy Metallurgy Friday night. So start Jim, TJ. I know Kellen's already got a list brewing. Make sure Jim and TJ get a list brewing. You're going to be on the big show Friday night for the year end special, but maybe we should do a best of the year for the album club. That would be kind of fun. So
yeah, sure.
That'd be cool. That'd be cool. Yeah. Anybody else? Anything? Bueller. All right.
Good to go.
Everybody have a great night. We will see you Friday, and stay metal and stuff. See ya.